It is the day of Obinze's wedding. However, at the courthouse, two policemen arrest him. The lawyer assigned to him is shocked when Obinze says that he'll willingly return to Nigeria. At the holding cell at Manchester Airport, he asks the immigration officer if he can have something to read, surprising the officer. However, his only entertainment option is to watch television after lunch. He believes that unlike the others in the cell, he is too soft, too dependent on the truth to try and immigrate again. He thinks of Ifemelu and wonders what she would think of him now. Nicholas and Ojiugo visit him with money and new clothes. Ojiugo keeps asking Obinze if they are treating him well, which annoys Obinze because he feels that's not what's important. Obinze and the other deportees must sit at the very back of the plane. When the immigration officer leads them back to an office to fill out paperwork, he asks for a bribe. His mother awaits him at the airport. Ifemelu cheats on Kurt. When Ifemelu admits her transgression, Kurt asks how she could do this when he was so good to her. Later, Ifemelu wonders why she sabotaged her life. She calls Kurt multiple times, but eventually accepts that he won't answer. Time flashes forward to a cocktail party after Barack Obama wins the Democratic Party's nomination. A Haitian woman claims race was never an issue in her relationship with a white man. Ifemelu argues that in America, race is everywhere, and black people in interracial relationships often don't tell their white partners what they face. This causes Ifemelu to remember the incident that led to her blog. Kurt comments that Essence is racially skewed for only showcasing black women. Ifemelu takes him to a bookstore to demonstrate how few dark-skinned women appear in magazines. Kurt claims he didn't intend the conversation to be a big deal. Ifemelu writes an email about this to Wambui, who encourages her to start a blog. In the weeks after she breaks up with Kurt, Ifemelu starts her blog with a rewrite of this email as her first post. She quotes this post at the party, proclaiming that the cure for racism is real romantic love that allows for people to be uncomfortable. The chapter ends with a blog post in which Ifemelu writes about a metaphor for race in America. Her white friend doesn't know that Michelle Obama's hair is not naturally straight. Andy Uju joins an organization called Doctors for Africa and goes on short missions in various countries. She has started dating a Ghanaian doctor named Kweku. Ifemelu's parents are finally able to visit her. Ifemelu thinks her parents now seem provincial. Her mother asks her if she has a friend, meaning a boyfriend, and warns her that women wilt like flowers. The day her parents leave, Ifemelu cries, upset that she's relieved that they have gone. She resigns from work, citing personal reasons. The success of Ifemelu's blog shocks her. People ask to support the blog, and so she puts up a PayPal link. People begin to donate, including an anonymous donor who gives her a large payment once a month. She wonders if it's Kurt. Soon she adds advertisements to the sidebar. However, she does not attach her name or photo to the blog, and when featured in the media, she only goes by the blogger. The first diversity talk that Ifemelu gives for a company in Ohio is a disaster, and she receives an email afterward that accuses her of being racist. She realizes that the point of diversity workshops is to make people feel good about themselves. Soon Ifemelu can afford to buy her own condo and to hire an intern. Despite her success, Ifemelu sometimes pictures her readers as a mob waiting to unmask her. Another blog post ends the chapter, this one opening the comments up as a safe space for black people in America who do not talk about their blackness event. Ifemelu runs into Blaine at a convention for bloggers of color. Blaine remembers her and explains that he had still been in a relationship when they met. They reconnect and eventually become lovers. Blaine eats organic foods. Unlike Ifemelu, he eats tempeh even though he doesn't like it. She thinks that he will help her become a better person. Ifemelu and Blaine move in together. Blaine begins to read her blog posts before they go up. Ifemelu makes changes based on his suggestions, but resents the process because she wants to observe, not explain. Blaine urges her to take responsibility for what she posts because people use her as an academic resource. Ifemelu's blog post that ends the chapter discusses how it is difficult to call someone racist in America, because the cultural understanding of a racist remains stuck in the civil rights era. Ifemelu goes with Blaine to visit his sister, Sean. Sean is upset about her publisher's image choice for her book cover and has been on the phone with the marketing director all morning. After taking a call from a French admirer, she explains that she likes how European men look at her as a woman and not a black woman. Ifemelu explains that she has had more interest from white men in America than black American men. Sean waves off her objection, claiming that her being foreign must be the reason. The publisher calls to let Sean know that they have changed the cover image. The chapter ends with a blog post in which Ifemelu explains how Barack Obama must remain the magic black man in the eyes of white Americans. Ifemelu defines the magic black man as a wise black man who never expresses anger about racism and gently helps white people with their tragic prejudices. Ifemelu attends a birthday party for one of Blaine's friends. Blaine's ex, a white woman named Paula, is also at the party. Ifemelu can't help but notice that Paula seems more comfortable with Blaine's crowd than she is. Paula brings up a blog post of Ifemelu's about the importance of white people listening to black people when they talk about their experiences. The conversation turns to Barack Obama, who has just announced his presidential bid. Ifemelu likes Hillary Clinton because she doesn't know anything about Obama, but she is soon drowned out by the discussion of how Obama makes people feel. After the party, Ifemelu tries to explain to Blaine that his connection with Paula makes her jealous. She likens it to how the fried chicken he and Paula eat is battered. Unlike the Nigerian fried chicken she knows, Blaine only notices the loaded invocation of fried chicken, but tells her there's no reason to be jealous. Ifemelu knows Blaine won't cheat, but she is jealous of a desire to be good that connects Blaine and Paula. Dyke is now a popular teenager. When speaking to his friends, he uses African American vernacular English AAVE. When Ifemelu asks him why, he changes the subject. Ifemelu attends one of Sean's parties. Sean complains that her editor undermined her memoir by doubting her experiences with racism. She laments that writing about race in America is impossible because white editors want nuance, which allows people to dismiss structural issues as individual quirks. When someone suggests Ifemelu blog about this literary problem, Sean claims that Ifemelu can write about race the way she does because she isn't American and doesn't feel the consequences of the topic. Ashamed, Ifemelu wishes Sean had told her that privately. The chapter's ending blog post discusses people who claim Obama is multiracial instead of black. Ifemelu argues that in America your race is decided for you. Boubacar is a new professor from Senegal. Blaine does not like him, possibly because Ifemelu and Boubacar instantly bond over being African. Boubacar encourages Ifemelu to apply for a Princeton Humanities Fellowship. Ifemelu gets a text from Blaine about Mr. White, a black security guard at the library. Ifemelu is not fond of him because he makes sexual innuendos about her and Blaine. Blaine tells her a white librarian noticed Mr. White lend a friend his car keys and assumed he was dealing drugs. The librarian's supervisor called the police. Blaine decides to organize a protest against the university's response. Although they never discuss her attending the protest, Blaine tells Ifemelu to text him when she gets to the library. Ifemelu does not go, and instead goes with Boubacar to a colleague's going-away lunch. Blaine texts to ask where she is, excited that even Sean came. Ifemelu claims she took a nap and overslept. Ecstatic over the turnout of his protest, Blaine tells her that they gave Mr. White his dignity back. Ifemelu admits her lie. Blaine is horrified and hurt. Blaine tells her that it's not enough for her to write her blog. She must live it. Ifemelu realizes Blaine believes she would care more if she were a black American. Blaine gives her the cold shoulder for days, and Ifemelu goes to visit Auntie Uju. The chapter ends with a blog post talking about how poor whites still have privilege over poor non-whites. At school, Dyke faces racist stereotyping. His principal accuses him of hacking into the school's computer system, although he is not computer savvy. Students ask Dyke for marijuana, and even the church pastor uses an approximation of AAVE when speaking to him. Finally, Blaine returns Ifemelu's calls. They tensely cook coconut rice together, realizing how divided they've become. Ifemelu's blog post accompanying this chapter focuses on American discomfort with race and how the language surrounding race is coded. Ifemelu now admires Blaine more than she loves him. Ifemelu reads Barack Obama's memoir, Dreams from My Father, and finds it inspiring. Blaine is shocked by their shared belief in Obama, which rekindles their passion. Even their friends argue less, because they are caught up in Obama's spell. Ifemelu gets the Princeton Fellowship, but promises Blaine not to move until after the election. When Obama wins the nomination, they finally have sex again. They watch Obama's speech on race. Blaine finds it immoral that Obama equates black anger and white fear. Ifemelu reminds him that Obama will not get elected if he tells the truth, but Blaine is hurt. Sean has a nervous breakdown because her book isn't selling well. Ifemelu attempts to discuss the election, hoping Obama will make conversation easy, but Sean is ignoring the election. Ifemelu recommends Obama's book. Sean counters that she wishes people would read her book. When Barack Obama wins the election, Dyke texts Ifemelu that his president is black like he is. As Ifemelu watches Obama's acceptance speech, she feels America is beautiful. Ifemelu's accompanying blog post praises white friends who take on the burden of explaining racism to other white people, but adds that they are few and far between. Ifemelu's flashback ends. Aisha is still working on her hair, now upset that her Igbo boyfriend has not come to talk to Ifemelu. Aisha asks Ifemelu how she got her green card. Aisha tried to have a green card marriage when she came to America, but her fiancé extorted money from her. Ifemelu explains that her job sponsored her green card. Aisha reveals that she couldn't go back to Senegal when her father died because she didn't have a green card. She hopes that her boyfriend will marry her so she can get a green card. Her mother is sick, and she wants to go to her funeral when she passes. Ifemelu promises that she will talk to her boyfriend for her and asks where he works. She makes sure to tip Aisha well, knowing the shop owner will take most of the fee. Andy Uju calls in a panic to tell Ifemelu that Dyke tried to commit suicide. Obinze worries about how Ifemelu waited for days before replying to him. He tries to research Blaine. He even revives his Facebook account to look up more about him, even though he had deleted his account because he hated the cultivated stories of people's lives. Obinze emails Ifemelu about his mother's death. Ifemelu replies a few hours later with condolences. Ifemelu explains that she is visiting Andy Uju for a personal matter, and asks for Obinze's phone number. Obinze replies, offering all his phone numbers. When Ifemelu does not reply, he writes her long emails detailing his time in London. Ifemelu replies and tells him about Dyke's suicide attempt. She gives him a link to her blog's archives and reveals that she's postponed her return. Obinze considers visiting Ifemelu and Dyke, but is interrupted by Kosi telling him that his mind is wandering. Obinze reads the archives of Ifemelu's blog and is shocked by how American the posts seem. He feels a sense of loss that he wasn't with Ifemelu while she changed so much. Ifemelu wonders why Dyke tried to commit suicide. She gets angry at Andy Uju, accusing her of constantly telling Dyke that he is not black, and not telling him what it means to be Nigerian. Andy Uju claims that Dyke suffers from depression like a lot of other teenagers. Dyke tells Ifemelu that she should go back to Nigeria like she planned. Ifemelu asks if he will visit her. Dyke agrees. Ifemelu's friend Raninudo greets her at the airport in Lagos. At first, Lagos overwhelms Ifemelu, and she cannot figure out whether the country has changed or she has. Raninudo calls her Americanah, a teasing term for Nigerians who come back from America with American affectations. In Raninudo's flat, NTA plays a patriotic fluff story, which Raninudo mocks. Rani Nudo never watches NTA, and, in fact, rarely watches any Nigerian stations at all. Rani Nudo's salary from her advertising job does not cover her rent, and she is dating a wealthy married man. She complains that her lover was supposed to get her a new car. The electricity has been off for a week, and Rani Nudo must run her loud generator until she goes to bed. Ifemelu has a job lined up as a features editor at Zoe, a women's magazine. The owner of the magazine, Auntie Wanu, loves the idea of having an editor who lived in America, and insists that Ifemelu visit her at home. Ifemelu finds this request unprofessional, but reminds herself that in Nigeria boundaries are blurred. She dreams of transforming Zoe into a great magazine, and shares her ideas with Auntie Wanu. Auntie Wanu is more interested in proving that Zoe is better than its competitor, Glass. Rani Nudo warns Ifemelu that if she hadn't just come from America, Auntie Wanu would have fired her for coming in with constructive criticism. In searching for a flat of her own, Ifemelu discovers being in Americanah opens doors. A landlord who only rents to expats is willing to make an exception for a returnee from America. Even though she is Igbo, she pays 2 years of rent in advance, and then realizes that people take bribes because most people cannot afford to pay this much at once. When Ifemelu yells at tile workers for doing a subpar job and threatens not to pay them, Rani Nudo tells her she's finally acting like a Nigerian. Rani Nudo asks why Ifemelu did not call Obinze to ask him for help on getting a nice flat. Ifemelu realizes that for Rani Nudo, men function as objects to manipulate. She has not yet told Obinze that she's back in Nigeria, although she replies to his emails. Ifemelu visits her parents on the weekends. She lies to her parents and friends that she and Blaine are still together. Her friends talk about marriage often, and Blaine protects her from her married friend's pity and from being expected to join in single friends' jealousy. Her friend Pry is now a wedding planner. A recent client had 7 governors attend her wedding. Ifemelu asks why governors are the sign of a successful wedding. Her friends explain that they show the couple is well connected. Pry and Ray Nudo declare that the rule of Lagos is to marry the man who can best maintain you. Auntie Wanu brags that most of Zoe's staff are graduates of foreign universities. There are only 3 editors on staff, and aside from Ifemelu, only Doris graduated from an American university. Doris tries to ally herself with Ifemelu over their shared Americanah-ness. Ifemelu resents Doris's assumption that they see the world the same way. So, when Zeme comments on Doris, leaving the air conditioning to high, Ifemelu takes Zeme's side. However, Doris and Ifemelu later bond over finding quirks of Nigerian dialect jarring. Doris invites Ifemelu to a meeting of the Nigerpolitan Club, a club for Nigerians returning from abroad. The Nigerpolitan Club members complain about the things they miss from abroad. Ifemelu recognizes that even she has self-righteousness in her voice and hates it. Fred, a Harvard graduate, invites her to get a drink. She declines, but tells him to call her. Ifemelu hates working for Zoe. During an editorial meeting, Auntie Wanu criticizes Ifemelu's interview for being judgmental. Ifemelu argues that this is no way to beat Glass. Doris argues their content is just like Glass's. Auntie Wanu leaves the editorial meeting to go shopping, and Ifemelu uses a call from Rani Nudo, an excuse to take a break. Rani Nudo's lover is withholding a Jeep he bought for her because she's not acting like the sweet girl she used to be. Ifemelu thinks how the phrase sweet girl means that Rani Nudo let him dictate who she was. Doris asks the secretary, Esther, how she's feeling. Ifemelu is ashamed she didn't notice Esther was sick. Ifemelu asks Esther what medicine she's taking. Esther brings her an unlabeled bottle. Ifemelu, shocked a doctor would give out unlabeled medication, suggests they run a health column. Doris counters that they are not activists. Ifemelu begins to envision a blog about Lagos. Ifemelu complains about the articles Zoe runs. Doris explains that the women featured pay Auntie Wanu and that is the way things work in Nigeria. Ifemelu says that she can never tell what Doris's true opinions are. Doris calls Ifemelu judgmental and asks why she wants to make anyone a news magazine about her. Ifemelu warns Doris that following Andiwanu will not lead to success. On the way out of the office, Esther tells Ifemelu that she has a husband-repelling spirit. Dyke visits Ifemelu in Lagos. He has never seen so many black people in the same place before. Ifemelu starts her new blog. She interviews Pry, has Zame write a gossip piece, and writes her own op-ed about the Nigerpolitan Club. After Ifemelu posts about young women in Lagos who rely on men for their lifestyles, Ronnie Nudo calls her up, furious. Ifemelu insists that the post was more about Andy Uju. Ronnie Nudo asks how these arrangements differ from Ifemelu's relationship with Kurt. Ifemelu apologizes. Ronnie Nudo tells her to call Obinze because Ifemelu's emotional frustration is making her lash out. Dyke asks Ifemelu about his father. She takes him to see Andy Uju's estate. Dyke asks if he can drive them back to Ifemelu's. When he leaves, he concludes that he likes Lagos. Ifemelu is tempted to tell him to move there, but stops herself. Ronnie Nudo asks how a boy like Dyke could want to commit suicide, calling it foreign behavior. Ifemelu is furious. After Ifemelu mistakes a man at a bank for Obinze, she decides to text him. He calls her back immediately and asks when he can see her. She suggests they see each other immediately. They meet at the Jazz Hole book shop. When Obinze asks her what book she came to buy, she tells him she decided that if their reunion is one to remember, she wants it to be at a place worth remembering. He is delighted by her honesty. They discuss how strange returning to Nigeria has been. Obinze flirts openly. He asks about Ifemelu's life in America, noting that he could tell she's changed a lot after reading her blog. He no longer dreams of America because it lost its allure when he realized his wealth opened the door to him. They meet again the next day. Obinze says he's pleased to talk with someone smart. Ifemelu realizes the comment about Kosi and wonders why he married her. Obinze praises Ifemelu's blog and tells her she needs investors. Ifemelu rejects his money. He asks why Ifemelu cut off contact. Ifemelu tells him about the tennis coach, and how afterward she felt like she had betrayed both herself and Obinze. Obinze acknowledges that she must have felt pain and loneliness, and wishes she'd told him. Ifemelu almost cries, and as Obinze holds her hand, she feels safe. Obinze teases Ifemelu for checking her blog on her phone over lunch. After a disappointing meal at an Italian restaurant, Ifemelu buys fried plantains from a market seller, who encourages her to get a car as well. Ifemelu admires that the woman is selling exactly what she makes, not a name brand or location. When Obinze drops Ifemelu off, she tells him she's tired of ignoring their attraction and upset that Obinze kisses her and then goes home to his wife. Obinze asks if she's still with Blaine, and she points out that he's married. Ifemelu brings up Zame's article on how to tell if a man is cheating. Obinze insists this doesn't feel like cheating. Ifemelu points out that no man thinks cheating feels like cheating. Obinze storms out of her flat, but returns a few minutes later, apologizing. He doesn't like to talk about their relationship as if it's just sex. Ifemelu agrees. They sleep together and, for the first time, Ifemelu understands the phrase making love. Ifemelu is so in love she feels like a cliché. However, the reality that Obinze is married looms. Obinze offers to cook for Ifemelu, commenting that Kosi doesn't like the idea of him cooking. He makes excuses for his marriage, explaining how vulnerable he had felt at that point in his life. Furious, Ifemelu says she plans to interview the wealthy man he dislikes. Obinze protests that she said she wasn't going to do that. They eat dinner, and Obinze reminds her that they love each other. He invites her to come with him on his trip to Abuja. Later, Obinze texts that he should go to Abuja alone because he needs to think things through. Ifemelu texts back that he's a coward. When she returns from the salon, Obinze is parked in front of Ifemelu's flat. He tells her he needs time to think. Ifemelu is furious that he resorts to using empty words and tells him to go to hell. In Abuja, Obinze thinks of Ifemelu. He realizes he's afraid of disrupting his life with Kosi, even though he doesn't even like his life with her very much. He calls Ifemelu multiple times, but she does not answer. Back in Lagos, Obinze prepares to go out to dinner with Kosi for Nigel's birthday. When he sees Butchie, he remembers how Kosi apologized for having a daughter. He had been disoriented from being newly rich when he started dating Kosi and liked her predictability. That night, Kosi tries to initiate sex, but Obinze refuses. The next day, he tells Kosi he wants a divorce. Kosi argues his family is his responsibility. She reveals that she knows he's seeing Ifemelu, and he's humiliated that she knew all along. Kosi insists he attend their friend's christening party the next day, laying out matching blue outfits for the whole family. Obinze feels like a coward for playing along with the charade. Bored and annoyed by the party, he confides in his friend that he wants to divorce Kosi and marry Ifemelu. His friend chastises him that getting divorced is white person behavior. Ifemelu watches as the male peacock that lives near her flat performs his mating dance. The female rejects him, and he looks ridiculous. Ifemelu wants to tell Obinze about it. She mourns losing Obinze. She doesn't doubt his love, but believes his sense of duty keeps him from following his heart. Rani Nudo encourages her to date, but instead, Ifemelu throws herself into her blog. Obinze appears at the door of Ifemelu's flat. He has written her a letter explaining that he does not want their separation to shadow their lives. He will divorce Kosi, but continue to help raise Butchie. He echoes the words he said at Kode's party all those years ago. I'm chasing you. Ifemelu invites him in. Americanah. Themes. Themes are the fundamental and often universal ideas explored in a literary work. The importance of authenticity. The characters in Americanah suffer when forced to deny their true selves and emotions, but find joy in the authentic, positing that honesty is the key to a happy life. Even unpleasant truths become worse when not told, as when Andy Uju's refusal to tell Dyke about the general leads Dyke to assume that he was unloved by his father. The falsehoods involved in immigration, from affecting an accent to using false identification, cause emotional strain, and lead to feelings of inferiority and invisibility. Ifemelu delights in a piece of junk mail addressed to her because it has her name on it, and is proof that she exists even as she attempts to find jobs as someone else. Above all, we see this appreciation and desire for honesty in Ifemelu and Obinze's relationship. Obinze's love of Ifemelu's bluntness causes her to find value in herself just as she is, and she chases this feeling of rightness and ease throughout the novel. Obinze recognizes the strain his divorce causes both Kosi and Butchie, but explicitly says that he doesn't want Butchie to grow up in a lie, emphasizing again that embracing uncomfortable truths, not hiding them, is the key to long-term happiness. Race and racism. Ifemelu quickly discovers that in America, white Americans treat her as a black American, despite the fact that she's from Africa. Throughout the novel, this confusing conflation of blackness creates tension for Adichie's characters. Characters like Andy Uju attempt to distance themselves from black Americans because, as Ifemelu notes, black Americans have the least amount of privilege in the American racial hierarchy. This distancing fails because white Americans in the novel do not differentiate by culture, and Andy Uju faces discrimination. Ifemelu notices that white Americans pit all black people against each other despite their extremely different histories, such as when Laura speaks of her Ugandan classmate who didn't get along with the black American woman in her class. Furthermore, the singular category of black leads black Americans in Americanah to assume that black non-Americans have an intrinsic understanding of their struggles. For example, Ifemelu disappoints Blaine for not caring as deeply as he does about the discrimination against Mr. White. While she can notice the horrific treatment of black Americans, this treatment will never be personal to Ifemelu. She feels that the American categorization of race flattens disparate peoples, conflating groups that don't necessarily understand each other. Immigration. In contrast to many immigrant novels of discovering the American dream, Americanah focuses on the dehumanizing nature of the processes involved in immigrating and reveals how they encourage dishonesty. For example, Ifemelu cannot legally work in the U.S. on a student visa, but requires more money than a work-study job would provide to make rent and tuition. Thus, she must resort to using another woman's papers to find work, a dangerous process that nearly forces her to take a sex work-adjacent job. Only through Kurt's money, Ifemelu able to start living life as herself without fear. Even though Auntie Uju already has medical education from Nigeria, the U.S. considers this inferior, and she has to subject herself to standardized testing while working minimum wage jobs. Not only does Obinze have to work under someone else's identity, he is subjected to dehumanizing assumptions from the people around him. Even the deportation paperwork uses the word removed, which is not a word generally used for human beings. As opposed to the common idea that immigrants themselves are poor, for those in this novel, the immigration process has made them poor, and often forces them into humiliating or even criminal situations.